Welcome back to Beauty Marks Podcast, a space where we embrace marks acquired through our journey. My name is Elizabeth Savion, and welcome back to another episode of this podcast. It is full holiday season, already into almost a week away, a week and a half away from 2022. I can't believe it. The high of this week was definitely going to New York City. I know I didn't talk about it in last week's episode, which I hope you enjoyed, all about goals and just dreaming for next year, how to really think about it in such a different way about who do I want to become. And that literally kept repeating for me. And I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. So last week, I went to New York City for a mini trip with one of my friends, and it was so amazing. It has been a blessing to be able to travel this year and be able to do things off my list, my bucket list that I made for myself. Just like when I talked in the Y el Novio episode, it was about making lists for yourself of what you want to do and doing them with a friend, a family, or by yourself, not having to wait for a partner or someone to do them with you. So this on my list since literally it was like months ago. I think it was like in August that I was like, I want to go see like Christmas because that's my favorite time of the year. And I was like, I want to go have that experience. So like, how am I going to make it happen? And then I wanted to go by myself. And then I was like, well, maybe I should have someone else go with me because it's New York. And it just all came to be. And it was an amazing trip. I got to go to the Rockette show, and just everything was so perfect and in sync, and just being able to like see the lights everywhere, and like you felt the holiday spirit in New York City. Just being there, the weather was amazing and amazing food, and so all of that was like no sleep, because in New York City, you really don't sleep. And I was determined and I was super tired. I like literally got 2 hours of sleep the first day, like to go, because I usually can't sleep prior to a trip. I feel like a little kid, like waiting for the first day of school. It's like that. Like that's what I feel like when I'm going to travel. And I'm so not a morning person, like naturally, but when I am about to go on a trip or going to Disney, I wake up like super fast, and I wake up like I can go on 2 hours of sleep. But for my gym, like like sometimes struggle to get there in the mornings. So yeah, so it was an amazing trip, super thankful to do it, and just encouraging you guys, like, make a list of the things that you want to do, whatever your relationship status is. I'm speaking for the single ladies that listen to this podcast. Definitely make the list and do the things for you. That was really the highlight of my week, was being able to go there. And I have done multiple things this week. Like I've gone to different light shows and going around. Like I literally went to go buy Starbucks for myself, and I went in my car and started driving around and looking at Christmas lights, and that made my heart really happy. Like I put Christmas music and did that, and it was really good. And so yeah, so that was the highlight. The low light of this week, I think it's the holidays, and I know a lot of people that I've spoken to have told me the same, but it's like the burnout, the exhaustion, like you feel like the extra stress because it's the holidays. And in the Thanksgiving episode that I did, I was talking about that, like how to actually like enjoy the season when you feel all this pressure is really hard, like to actually be present and understand that it's really about the time that you're spending with the people, not about the gifts that you're giving or about how to make things so aesthetic and perfect for everyone. Because we're the ones that put that pressure on ourselves. No one else does. Like everyone's there on Christmas to hang out, be around each other. For the most part, that's really what it is. It's about family and celebrating and just coming together. But the extra pressure is definitely the gifts. And so I'm sending a lot of love and hugs to people that may feel very overwhelmed right now because you have a long list to do and just so much on your plate. So, I definitely want to just, remind you guys to be kind to people, because for some, this time of the year is not the best and the merriest for everyone. Some people are very stressed, lonely, heartbroken, dealing with loss. And now with the whole COVID thing, that the numbers are going up again. And it's just like you feel it, like you do feel it, but make sure to just be kind and check on people and be patient and take a deep breath, because people are just maybe just reacting. Literally, those are the best things that you can give right now in showing love and compassion to other people during this season. So, in this week's episode, I have Amy Osorio, and she is a mental health advocate. She shares her story of dealing with depression from a very young age, going through the pressure to perform and just being the oldest of four and dealing with some very hard, traumatic family issues as a young child, but also as an adult. As she talks about issues that she has had with her father and just learning to get out of that and becoming more self aware. So I thought that this would be a great topic, and I hope that you get something out of it. So let's just get right into it. So I'm very excited because today I have a special guest. Her name is Amy, and I actually met her through social media, and we'll be talking about mental health, her own story, depression, and more. So thank you so much, Amy, for joining me on this week's podcast.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, those that don't know you, can you share a little bit about what you're passionate about?
Yes, so I am very passionate about mental health. As stated, I'm a mental health advocate, and I also am currently a student studying for psychology. And one day I would love to open my own practice or even become a child psychologist, um, so that I can work in the most delicate of stages of our life, which is the developmental stage, where we see a lot of trauma first happening in our lives in the
Mm.
child stage. So that's a little bit of what I'm passionate about.
What made you so passionate about mental health in general? Because I see like your posts and like we relate very much in that, because we both post about it, are very big advocates for like getting therapy and all of that. So can you share a little bit about what really got you into it?
Yes, absolutely. So actually, I was about 13 or 14 years old. So when you're 13, 14, you're either in seventh or eighth grade, depending the year, the year that you were born. So I remember being in my seventh grade class. We had like a writing workshop that we had to do. I think it was like journal time.
Mm.
And I remember writing about not wanting to be alive, essentially.
Mm.
And that was something that the teacher at the time, the homeroom teacher I had, was very like, kind of like, oh my gosh, this may be something that I we need to speak to the dean of students about. And I was brought to the office, and I just remember being in tears because
Mm.
even though I didn't understand that what I had written impacted the teachers very much, it alerted them.
Mm.
um, it was something that I felt at the time, and I didn't understand that that was essentially depression and suicidal ideation. And it wasn't until I got older, that I was about the age of 18, I had gone to see my regular physician, the physical doctor physician,
Mm.
and she had given me like a survey. Some physicians still do this. I don't know if everyone's doctor does it, but at the time, my doctor gave me a survey about moods, like how I felt that day, how I usually feel, if there's anything constant that changes or stays the same in my moods, as a specific emotion. And I remember when I filled it out, she did say, I don't want to diagnose you, because technically physicians, well, I mean, they could.
Mm.
They are able to kind of give you a person or a psychologist, psychiatrist that could see you for it. But she's like, you have depression. Now, when I was 18, I was working, so I was working in at school at the time in college, so I got kicked out of my mom's healthcare. So I wasn't even able to, I wasn't even able to get diagnosed properly. I wasn't
Mm.
able to see a therapist or a psychologist. And it got even worse over the years. So
Mm.
from 18 to the age of 21, 22, I did not have the greatest of times. I was out and about, partying every weekend, smoking and drinking, trying to fill a void. Is that was a trauma response. And I didn't really have the worst childhood. I guess it's more so my relationship with like my father impacted it, my relationship just in general with people affected it. And over time, like I said, I did everything I could to fill that void.
Mm-hmm.
And I was still battling with this deep desire to not be alive. And I know for some people it's tough to speak about, so trigger warning. um, there was a friend of mine that I had at the time who self-harmed. So I would never do something like that, but I still tried to find a way out in a way. And I would constantly tell her, like, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be alive. And I would feed off of her also not wanting to be alive. So being surrounded by that type of mindset, drinking and smoking, partying every weekend, just basically throwing my life away. I had dropped out of college at that point. I stopped hanging around my family members. Like, I remember we had this one reunion one time, all the family members were there except for me. And it was kind of like, I don't want to be outside, I don't want to see anyone. And it just went on for so long that I was like, okay, so like, what is it going to take for me to not be in this place anymore? And so once I finally found a way out, the light at the end of the tunnel, that's when I wanted to be the advocate and stand up and be the example for others. Because if I felt that way, growing up in a Christian household, having to go to church because my parents were in church, um, being someone who was the oldest of four, and I battled with that, I can only imagine how many others have felt the same like I did. And that is why I was so passionate to be like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to stand, for those who feel like their voices will not be heard. I want to advocate on behalf of those. I want to educate what is depression, what is anxiety, what is all of these things under the umbrella of mental illness. So it really took me going through it to actually want to stand up for mental health.
Wow, you said that so well, and thank you for sharing your story, your truth. I know now at this point, like you even said this before, that you're kind of like an open book because you've worked
Yeah.
through a lot of that. But can we go more into your story, what you said about that you first started feeling like that when you were like
Yeah.
around 13, like middle school? What was happening in that time that you feel, so you did have friends that, all were also, not at the best mental state at the time, but like what else was going on within yourself that you feel like was triggering that?
Yeah, so a lot of it was, like I said, the exterior was the lack of relationship, emotional relationship with my father. He was present in my life, in my siblings and I's life, but obviously he wasn't there emotionally, and that does create an imbalance. For certain kids, some kids are like not affected by it. For others, it is important to have a relationship with their parents. I mean, it should be important in general because your parents are the first two vital people, guardians that you have in your life from the minute you're born. But interiorly, there was a lot of changes, obvious hormonal changes. I was getting older. I was 13, 14 years old. And a lot of it was just like me growing up, seeing that others around me were kind of like better than me in a way. Obviously, this is my
Mm.
mind as a 13, 14 year
Yeah.
old. And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, she's so prettier, so much prettier than me. And oh my gosh, like she's so much more developed than me. And at that time with the depression, I also felt it wasn't body dysmorphia, but it was a lack of security in my body. I was like, I don't even know if my body is mine, if it's attached to me in a way. And yeah, there was just a lot of insecurity of myself, a lot of, again, the relationship issue. And there was just, as the oldest, there's also a huge pressure. If you're the oldest sibling, and if you're a Latino or a minority, you understand this so well, that there's so much pressure for you to perform. You are always put on a pedestal by everyone, not just your parents. And so, even going to church, it was a pressure to perform. And I'm just
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, anything I do is not good enough. So what's the point of living? Obviously, for me, because I was 13 and 14, it was a little exaggerated because I was just a kid. However, I would never downgrade anyone's feelings. I empathize and validate anyone's feelings at any age. But for me, there wasn't any turning point that was dramatic. I feel like the only trauma was with my father. When I did get turned the age of 18 and got older, that is when things really took a turn. Now I'm 18. Now I'm getting a different view of the world than what I grew up in. Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing things differently. Now I'm, smoking and drinking and hanging around people I shouldn't, for
Mm-hmm.
my good. Not that they're bad people, but for my good at the time, just toxic friendships and things. And so that is when things got even deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Like I stated, I didn't want to be outside. I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't trust anyone. I didn't trust myself. So as I got older, it only got worse because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when you turn 18, you quickly realize, and also you wake up in a way. You're not naive anymore. You're like, I'm an adult. I see things differently. I'm not a kid anymore. And when you start to make your first steps, you realize that you are prone to stumble in every aspect. And I feel like being exposed to the world like I was at 18 brought on the feeling of void and the feeling of I don't want to live anymore, and suicidal ideation. I would think about it every day, literally. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it in a way it was like anxiety. It was like, why can't I just, like, God, just take me. If you even exist, just take me. It was an everyday thing. So for me, it was deeper when I was 18, even though it
Mm-hmm.
did start a little earlier, 13, 14, but it got
Mm-hmm.
deeper after I was like, I guess I kind of woke up in a way. I got
Mm-hmm.
older. I was not naive anymore, and I'm like, okay, things are not as they seem, and there's just so much pressure coming from everywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it got deeper as I got older.
Mm. Yeah, and that's usually like for people, like even when we started the conversation, that you're like, trauma that happens when you're younger, it just kind of like escalates over time if we don't
Yes.
deal with it. And I can completely relate to you in that it's like if you don't like it's like if you don't feel good within yourself, then you also are attracting, toxic friendships, toxic environments. Like you're around that so much that it starts infiltrating you and like
Yes.
who you are, and
Mm.
I am the middle child, so I don't know how the oldest responsibility is, but I know that that's still a big load to carry,
Yeah.
with your family expectations. And how were you able to kind of find the light in when you were so deep in?
Yeah, so I know for a lot of people, this will probably sound cliche, but I've always believed that there's a difference between religion and relationship. And for me, not having my father like I wanted to have him in my life, I always sabotaged my relationships. I was always the one that would leave first to prevent from me feeling that neglection, that rejection, that hurt.
Mhm.
So it there came a time where I was like, you know what, I need to change. I keep doing these things that are toxic for my health in every aspect, and it's not helping. I see no good thing coming out of this, so I'm gonna try something new. And began to establish a relationship by myself with the Lord. I unlearned everything I was taught growing up about the church, about religion, and I began to seek him for myself. And I was like, you say in your word that you are able to, cover all multitudes of sins because of Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. So if that is true, I hope you could start with me. So I began having that relationship with God by myself, and I started to feel like, okay, this is not a relationship that I need to run from. This is a relationship
Mhm.
I need to run towards. And that's when it started flourishing, having that intimacy with the Holy Spirit. But aside from that, because we can always speak about, in the spiritual, we can always speak about God.
Mhm.
But aside from that, I more so needed to dig myself out of that hole, that dark hole. And I know that sounds like, okay, that's basic. Like you don't have no other solutions,
Mm-hmm.
but it really takes you to get you out of there. Obviously, you're not self sufficient. You know, God exists for a reason, He created you for a reason. But when it comes to really wanting something, really desiring something, yearning something, you literally need to do that yourself. And it took me getting myself out of there. Okay, we're going to go get a job. Okay, we are going to start, like going back to school if that was the case. We're going to start saving for a car, and we're going to do this. We're going to stick to it. And I say we, me and myself.
Mm-hmm.
But it really took me taking myself out of that and speaking to myself as my friend and not my enemy. I feel like when I was deep in depression, I spoke to myself as an enemy because that is all I heard growing up, anyways. Because again,
Mm-hmm.
as the oldest, nothing you ever do is good. So it was kind of like I used to be my enemy. Now it took me to be my friend, to be like, no, we're gonna get out of this. Everything's gonna get better. And even if there's little obstacles on the way, that's fine because they are put in place for you to grow and flourish. And so, it took my relationship with God, it took my relationship with myself, and it also took mending relationships around me, those outside of myself and God, which was my family, my friends, um, that I had at the time. And I'm still to this day, still trying to mend relationships with certain family members outside of like my parents and my siblings. I'm still, trying to mend relationships of friends, so platonic relationships of friends. But that's something you learn every single day because we are not perfect. There are times where you slip up or you withdraw. It's something that you're just like, I'm so used to acting this way or being this way, and you withdraw to that. But it takes you to take accountability of yourself and be like, no, we can't do that. We cannot go back to who we were, and really push yourself forward. So yeah, it took those three, like I said, having that relationship with God, relationship with myself, and relationship with friends and family, to
Mm-hmm.
really pull myself out of that. Because again, like you said, which is key, if you don't learn to confront it and to heal, you will forever carry that with you, that hurt, that pain, the mental illness with you throughout your life. Obviously, there's certain mental disorders you are born with, and we know that there's a difference between a mental illness and a mental
Mm-hmm.
disorder. There are some people that are born with like ADHD, or I have a cousin who has autism. There are
Mm-hmm.
certain disorders that you're born with, and you learn to kind of pivot throughout your life as you get older.
Mm-hmm.
Mental illnesses, I feel like for some of them, they are temporary as long as you take care of yourself in several ways. Medication is not the only way. And obviously,
Mm-hmm.
that's off topic. I'm sorry. But medication is not the only way. There are other ways that you can heal from mental illnesses, recreational activities, um, and again, healing. Just starting with that. How can you take that, that best step forward to healing? What conversations do you need to have with people? What people do you need to forgive, or you need to hear forgiveness from, in order to be
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I've crossed this bridge, and I'm over it, I've healed from it, now I'm ready to heal the next thing that I'm, that I'm battling with. So it really took those three for me to really dig myself up, because I was digging like an
Mm-hmm.
archaeologist. I was digging myself out of this depression. At one point I even told God, I was like, I don't think you can do this. I do not think you can save me, you can change me. I'm battling with such a deep thought of not wanting to be alive, that I doubt that you can change my life around. And today I literally yearn to live, to help
Mm-hmm.
others, and to help others heal. So yeah.
Wow. That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so sorry that you experienced that, throughout your life, but it's amazing to see that you're using what you've went through to help others, which I feel like that's at the end of the day what God uses our pain. He makes it into using it for his purpose,
Yes.
whatever we go through. I want to go back to something that you said about, a big pain that you had was with your dad. Were you able to mend that relationship to start healing? Was that part of your journey of it, or was that something that is still in works in progress?
So definitely work in progress. I feel like I'm able to talk about it more now than I used to. But so growing up, I distinctly remember I was like a year old, and this is crazy. I'm like 26 now, so I should not have good memory. But
Mhm.
I remember being like a year old and having my dad present and playing with him.
Mhm.
You know, like him playing with me as a kid,
Mhm.
and being daddy's little girl in the beginning. As I did get a little, into like the adolescent ages, I remember seeing him in prison. I remember my
Mhm.
mom packing us up in the car, let's go visit your dad, and he was in prison. So it was a little
Mhm.
harder as you get older because you don't understand what it is to have your father in prison. You don't, I mean, obviously you don't think it's a great thing, but as a
Mhm.
kid, you can't comprehend
Mhm.
that. And so, as once he comes out of jail, I'm a little older, I'm like 8, 9, 10, and feeling and witnessing how much he isn't present emotionally scarred
Mhm.
me, because I'm thinking, wow, like then he really doesn't want me. He doesn't care for me. And it was hard growing up seeing how other girls my age, or even boys my age at that time, had that relationship with their dad. And not that I yearned to be, quote unquote, daddy's little girl, but has always been important for me to have both of my parents have that kind of reciprocated relationship with them. So because of that, my mom, in a way, had to play both roles. Even
Mhm.
though he was present physically, the times that he was not, all of the times that he was not present emotionally, my mom was. And she quickly became my siblings and I's best friend. Like that's our
Mhm.
love of our life in a way.
Mhm.
And as I got older, he just got stricter and stricter.
Mhm.
And I always say ex pastor's kid because they're no longer pastors, but
Mhm.
my parents were pastors two times in my life. One time was in 2007, so again I was in seventh grade.
Mhm.
That same year of being 13 and 14, and writing about suicidal
Mhm.
ideation. And I remember that it was a tough year for us. So he only pastored for 1 year, and after that, like, we stopped. And in 2015 they became pastors again, and they were pastors again for 4 years. Now in
Mhm.
2019, and throughout this whole process, again, my dad is not emotionally available. He would say things. I had been called out by out of my name by my dad. um, Things have been said from him that have been very harsh, that had kind of like a negative impact in my self-esteem. And I'm just
Mhm.
like, wow, like, your parent is not supposed to do that. Your parent is not supposed to make you feel like inferior.
Mhm.
And I would always, in a way, like, compare, like, my mom doesn't say those things. Mommy doesn't, treat us like this. So why does Papi treat us like this? So in 2019, unfortunately, he committed adultery, and it was really tough on our family, especially
Mhm.
because at the time they're pastors. So it's really, really hard on us. We're just battling through it. Oh my gosh, it was a
Mhm.
strong battle in the house. And it's something that I didn't realize in the moment. Now that I look back at it, when that happened, everything that I held in for years as a child were brought back to that moment.
Mhm.
That trauma we went through as a family triggered all my childhood moments of, wow, why is Papi like this? Why isn't he emotionally available? It triggered that, and I brought that with me. And in that moment, I was like, I hate him. I
Mhm.
hate being in this family. I hate being in this church. I hate having to pretend like everything's okay, put on this mask while we're at church. And the church folks think, oh my gosh, like the Osorios, they're such a perfect family. And I hated myself for not saying anything in the
Mhm.
moment, like, to the people. And it was such a tough year. I remember I hated myself. And I know hate is a strong word, but I say that because I took accountability afterwards, but I treated people horribly that year. Le salía con cosa. Like, I would be so disrespectful to, like, some of the church elders. I would be
Mhm.
so, and again, like, I'm the pastor's kid. If anything, I should be giving an example. I should be the
Mhm.
first one giving that example. And I would be so rude to one of the youth, that, we had already spoken and hashed everything out, and I apologized deeply. But it was something that impacted me so much because I realized that I allowed what my father did and what happened to make kind of like control me and
Mm-hmm.
my emotions and my expressions, and I blew up towards everybody because of that. At one point, he went back to where he was at the time when he committed adultery, and he had texted me about something, and I texted him back and I said, "Don't ever text me again. I don't want to hear from you. You know, you've never been there for us as a father. And this thing that you did is not something that God is happy about." In that moment, I realized this is bigger than I thought. Like, I'm really
Mm-hmm.
battling, and it has caused me to feel the way that I do. And obviously, all emotions, like I said, are valid, and they're very much, we can empathize because this is something that happens to many people. This is something that does not sit well with a lot of people. This is not
Mm-hmm.
something that I would wish on anyone. But in that moment, I realized that I allowed what he did to dictate my actions and my emotions and what I did and said to people, which was not right. Because at the end of the day, what he did, he did. He needs to pay for that, not me. You know, I should not be angry at that. But I was in the moment, and I was just distraught. Oh my gosh. I
Mm-hmm.
remember when you posted that in 2019 you were battling with your mental health. Same here. I literally was all smiles on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Everything seemed like everything was, going well. And I was like, this is not it. This is not the year for me.
Mm-hmm.
This, I cannot believe this is happening. God, why would you let this happen? Why would you allow this? And I was so glad that 2019 finished, but then 2020 happened. And I was like, dang, like it was back
Girl,
to back.
same. Girl, same.
But I was like, I mean, I guess we needed a rest after
Mm-hmm.
2019. But yeah, that was kind of like the situation with my dad.
Um,
And he did marry the woman that he's with today. He's here living in the States, she's somewhere else, but um, we haven't been able to really speak on the topic, to really,
mm-hmm.
really dig deep and, cry if we need to and just forgive
Mm-hmm.
each other. Um, but I feel like it's because he doesn't want to speak about it. I've already forgiven him. I just feel like in a way there needs to be some acknowledgement of why weren't you present? Why
Mm-hmm.
did you feel the need to be so far away from us, your children? But I feel like he acknowledges what he did. He feels very deeply sorry, and if he's had some talks with my mom about it, and
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I've forgiven him, but it is a process. To this day, it is
Mm-hmm.
a process to kind of fully mend that relationship and have that father daughter, and not just with me, but with my siblings as well. They're not
Mm-hmm.
as expressive as I am. They actually dealt it, and everyone deals with it differently, but
Mm-hmm.
they dealt with it in their own way, in a quiet way. I was the one that blew up and was expressive and cried almost every day. But I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I needed to feel that way to look back and be like, wow, like we cannot do this again. We cannot allow for other people's actions to dictate how we feel.
Mm-hmm.
And really just to move forward and be able to be like, you know what? Anything that happens with any of my platonic or romantic relationships from now on, there needs to be accountability in the moment. There needs to be
Mm-hmm.
mending in the moment and healing in the moment, so that I don't carry that hurt with me
Mm-hmm.
towards everyone, throughout my life.
Yeah. No, yeah, because when you go through such pain and trauma, because that sounds like a lot to go on in
Yeah.
like such a short period of time. It's like we don't know how, like we don't even know what we're feeling. So it's like how, we just end up like lashing out in our actions of,
Yes.
what we're experiencing, our within. So, it's crazy. Like I'm still processing how you're telling the whole story because it's
Yeah.
just there's so many parts to it. But it's encouraging to see that you were still able to get to the place where you're at now and have
Yeah.
more peace, even if the other side or the other party that has hurt you maybe isn't there yet. And I think that that's true that, not always can we get to that place of like complete, but I pray that that does happen one day for you and your
Amen.
dad. And something else that I wanted to talk about was what you said about, what you post on social media versus, the
Yes.
life that you show versus that's such a good reminder that I think that we just need to always remember that like what you see on social media is not always true and it's just a
Yes.
highlight. It is not the full story. And even when people are posting, because the other flip side of that is people that are posting like that they're depressed or that
Mhm.
they have anxiety. A lot of us, a lot of people can think, oh, they just want attention. Oh, they're just always complaining. Oh, they're just always. So it's like, what do you want to see? Do you want to see perfect people or do you
Yes.
want to see like the real, honest, people, like people
Yes.
being, you know? So it's always like a hit or miss. I always have to remind myself that because we sometimes just think, especially when we're going through something, we look on social media, we see, we're like, well, they have it better. Look at that. Like, so I have to like show that I'm doing fine when that's not the
Yes.
case. There's so much power in vulnerability.
Yes, and going off of that, I'm so glad you mentioned that. For me, I've made it a vow to myself like, Amy, if you don't feel like it, don't post. I
Mm,
feel like, so I grew up on social media. I remember I got a MySpace for the first time in 2009. And then I got a Facebook in 2010, and I've had Facebook
mm-hmm,
for so long. And then I got an Instagram in 2013. I had a Twitter in between. I had like all the social medias that were cool in the
mm-hmm,
past. I've had them, but I feel like I grew up on social media, even because when I was in 2009 ninth grade, I was what, 15. So before 15 years of age, like,
mm-hmm,
what is the internet? Like, we didn't
mm-hmm,
know. I didn't have a phone, I didn't have none of that. So once I get on social media, it's this brand new world. You want to share everything,
mm-hmm,
especially when you're so vulnerable at a vulnerable age, 15. You want everyone to know what you're doing today, or you're going to school, and who you're going to meet
mm-hmm,
there, and all your friends, and this is and that. You want to share with the world that, but we've gotten so advanced in the
mm-hmm,
world and technology that now it's kind of like you're either showing off or you're asking for attention, and it's
mm-hmm,
so hard to kind of separate the people of, no, I just want to post because I just want to post, versus the people like, oh, I want you to envy my life, I want you to
mm-hmm,
see what you can't get. It's hard, but
mm-hmm,
I feel like for me, like I said, I made a vow with myself. If you don't feel like posting, don't post. And if you
mm-hmm,
feel like God is telling you, I need you to speak to someone through this post it. So
mm-hmm,
like, again, I've been on Instagram since 2013, so I should have like 1,000 posts by now. But I've been able to kind of like take control over my social media life, I guess you could say,
mm-hmm,
and be like, no, if I'm gonna post, I'm gonna be intentional about it. I want,
mm-hmm,
people to be like, wow, I can relate to her. Like, she, like you, how you said in the beginning, she's just as human as me,
mm-hmm,
and I've been able to be like, if you don't feel like you're being genuine, just put your phone down. Don't do nothing about it. Don't post. You don't have to. And
mm-hmm,
I feel like that's part of positively speaking to yourself and being your own friend. Like, if you
mm-hmm,
know that you don't need to do something, don't do it. Like,
mm-hmm,
the world is not gonna, I mean, not that not that anyone doesn't care, but the world is not gonna be like all upset if you don't post. And if you do, God is always gonna reach out to that one person that really needs that message, that really needs to hear your testimony. So now, like I said, I post with intention, and even if I'm not having the best time in real life, I still try to be genuine with it.
mm-hmm,
um you've seen my post about mental health. I love speaking about mental health even when I know I'm not at my best. And
mm-hmm,
I, glory to God, I've been healed from depression. 2019, like I said, was a really hard time, but even before then, God healed me from depression. I battle with minor anxiety here and there because I
mm-hmm,
do so many different things, and there's still to this day pressure, to not perform, but in a way pressure to just be present and
mm-hmm,
available to people. So I still battle, with that. And like I said, 2019 was a tough year, and I feel like more so spiritually because I was battling with understanding why God permitted what he did for our family. So there are bad times. Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
not something that, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna see the darkness of depression, or I'm never gonna feel anxiety again. There are moments where depression and anxiety will not care who you are, what's
Mm-hmm.
your age, where you come from, what if you have all this money in the bank, if you don't, it literally will hit you. And the best thing that I can say for that is really just staying in tune with yourself, listening to yourself, and be like, okay, what do you need right now in this moment, so that we are not falling deeper in this depression or
Mm-hmm.
anxiety or whatever mental illness you're battling with. And that sounds easier said than done. Like I said before, there are many ways to be able to heal through. It's not just medicine, it's not just certain things. It's recreational activities, getting some movement in your body, food in your body, so many different ways. But getting back to the point, like you said, I think it's important to realize that social media is fake. Social media, you only see a highlight reel of people's lives, you don't see it all. But there are a few of us that exist in this world that still want to be as genuine as we can on social media, and share with you guys our bits and pieces of when we are not having the best time of our lives. And when we are having the best times of our life, we want to celebrate that with you, because my joy is your joy and your joy is mine. So yeah, I just wanted to add on to that, because very true. Social media
Yeah.
is not, we don't have it all figured out.
No, no, and we will never. Even if you point
Yes.
someone out, I'm sure that there's something that's falling apart there.
Yeah.
No, because that's so true. Just to add to what you were saying is that, like, during this past summer, I was started getting kind of like in the low of like my mental health, and I knew, I was like, nope. Well, I've told myself before, I'm not going to post for like affirmation, like, because
Yeah.
when you start feeling low, you want to like, let me put a post. You're gonna get some like feedback. You're gonna feel good, or it's like a dopamine that you get from social media. It's insane. You can like look it up. It's literally in our brain. And then the
Yes.
second thing is posting like a life that I'm not living, like, to be
Yes.
true to something that I'm posting, or I'm being honest and genuine. And I just felt, I'm like, I just have to take a break, because I
Yeah.
know that I am not going to be genuine in this moment. So I literally took 2 months off social media, which is like insane. But like I needed that. And even the podcast, because I just felt like that was like what I like, my soul needed that. Like I needed to like really like
Yes.
dig deeper and just like work on some things. And it's also different when you have tools. And that's what I always recommend to Beauty Marks podcast, anyone listening. It's to find your tools, if it's through therapy, if it's through medication, if it's through habits, like how you said, like find those tools and support, because
Yeah.
during the time, like, life isn't always going to be perfect. So you always want to have those things set up, so that if
Mhm.
those things do happen, when things don't go great, so
Yeah.
I appreciate you, Amy, for sharing your
Yeah.
story, and I know that someone got a lot out of what you said today, and just being vulnerable about, your mental health, but also your family history, and all of that. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Where can people connect with you and all that you're doing?
Yes. So my Instagram is at Amy M Osorio, and pretty much I'm on there all the time, unless I'm taking my little breaks, which are very, very
You do
necessary.
that too. Yeah. I
There
have
are
seen
just
that.
times. Yes, there are just
Yeah.
some times that I disappear, because it's good. Like you said, I wanted to like touch off really quick on what you said.
Mhm.
It's important to retreat often and have like solitary moments with yourself. Don't isolate yourself, but take your time off of social media, because it can be a lot. And it's okay to do so. Like, if you need to rest, if you need to take time, take yourself on a walk, take yourself on a date by yourself. Like, do it. Get off social media as often as possible. But yeah, when I'm not on there, I'm just like just working full time and studying. But you can find me on there. I'm trying to post more often, just to uh, like I said, get back onto my mental health advocacy. But
Mhm.
I've been also posting on YouTube. You could just find me as well on Amy Osorio. and I'm trying to do more cute vlogs with like my siblings because I find them so fun when I watch it from other people's family, like
Mm-hmm.
sibling things. So
Mm-hmm.
I know people will find joy in it because my siblings are hilarious, and I stand on that. Like they're funny,
Yeah.
so I feel like other people will find joy in it. So yeah, YouTube and Instagram right now.
Okay. Well, definitely go follow her. And again, thank you so much for your tools and just sharing your knowledge with us and just encouragement. Wow. So it was brought up during the episode about talking about 2019 and what I went through in that time. And I even made a post about this a few weeks ago. And so many people can relate to it. And it's just by showing your marks to other people, you're showing them, like, hey, I have been there and it hurt and I've gone through some pain, but I'm still here. And this is what I did to get out of it. And this is my story. And I'm embracing my story because that's what made me who I am today. And I really want you guys to think about that coming up to the end of the year. Just what marks of this year are you embracing that are part of your story, not your identity, but part of your story that you can use to help someone else? Just thinking back to this time of the year is such an important time for me because 2 years ago was when I was at the lowest point in my mental health. And just looking back at pictures, I got the memories on Facebook that showed me like 2 years ago. And I was like, wow, like you would have not known, like looking at that girl, looking at the picture, you would have not known what I was going through and what I was struggling with because I hid it so well. And it makes me emotional because I know that there are people that are experiencing similar things and they just put on the pretty face and they just do what they have to do, but they are struggling on the inside and they haven't dealt with it and they don't know how to get out of it and they feel stuck and they feel alone, and it breaks my heart because I know how difficult that was. And thinking back to how numb I felt and how I didn't want to feel anymore and how I felt like I was going to be there forever. Like like I couldn't imagine myself being happy. Like there was like a hope, but there was also like it sounded good for everybody else, but it's like, was I ever going to see a better day for myself? And just looking till 20 to 2020 and some difficult challenges that I had. And then this year, life, God doesn't promise us a life without pain and without suffering. Like we do have hardships. Um, but he promises that he will be there with us. And that's also why he puts other people around us. That's why we need people, because other people help us to heal and to pray for us and to encourage us. And a community is super important. I just want to encourage you to keep going. If you are going through depression, please speak out to someone. Please reach out and let someone in to that part. I'm going to link the episode that I did last year on the show notes if you haven't listened to the one where I was depressed. And I know one day next year, I'm going to share more of that whole process and even a process that I've been through this year. But um, I really hope that you know that you're not alone and you know that you are loved, and life is so much better because you are in it, because you are here, and it will get better. If I look back to where I was last year, God knows that I did not know how things were going to look this year. I was just like meeting with my friend and telling her, like, okay, this is what I hope. Like, is it even possible? Like, is it even possible for me to be happy? Like, is it even possible for me to feel like myself? Because I was such at a low point. And so to be where I'm at now is such like an answered prayer, because I remember asking God, like, God, please, like, just show up, like, change, like, do it, like, I'll do whatever, like, just change how I feel, like, change what's going on inside me, like, because I feel like I was just very low, So if you are going through that or have been through it, I am with you, and just sending a virtual hug to those listening. Thank you guys again, always for listening, tuning into this week's episode. Thank you for leaving a review. Thank you for sharing it. It means so much to me. It helps the podcast grow and build a stronger community, build mental health awareness, and just awareness for other people to know that they're not alone. And really, my vulnerability, as hard as it is sometimes to talk about these things, I know that it's for someone listening. So if that's you, this is for you. This is your sign to go get help, to reach out, make something different, especially as a new year's coming. If that's your goal, like, it can be possible. A year from now, you can be in a completely different place. And I speak that over you. You can do it. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you guys have a great Christmas, or if you open your gifts on the 24th or on the 25th and you just enjoy it with family and friends, make sure to get some rest and make sure to have grace with yourself and with others. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you guys next week.